You can start, Bu Judy.
Okay, thank you. Hello, good day, Recfon friends. I hope everyone is healthy, happy. Yeah, that is the most important thing because our webinar today is on food and culture. So everyone likes food, I believe. So thank you for joining in. We will be discussing issues related to food, health, but from a different perspective. So here we have an expert on sociology as well as on history. So we will be discussing further about that. We would like to see how much food and culture and their influences on our modern diet that we are currently having. And at the same time, we want this webinar to provide us as a platform for having a more multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary discussion. So without further ado, I would like each one of us to enjoy the video for all of us to be aware of or knowing more about Simeo organization. Thank you.
It's time to open our eyes to a bright and promising future. We'll rise to the call of the times and create a stronger tomorrow. Let's start to make a difference, teaching everyone to learn through science, health and technology. We will share our expertise by promoting knowledge and policies. We can build a better world. Let us take a step for our visions alone, making future plans for the people to grow in a life filled with happiness and grace. Building the future is our legacy. We'll achieve our goals through partnership, creating opportunities. By working hand in hand, we can accomplish all our dreams. For a better quality of life is now within our reach. Let us take a stand for our visions alone, making future plans for the people to grow in a life filled with happiness and grace. Hear us, Savior.
Thank you. I hope you get the last rhyme, building the future is our legacy. Indeed, that's why we will be also discussing issues related to the history, because history will also build what we are now. With us today, we have Dr. Muhtaruddin Mansur. We would like to invite Pak Muhtar to give your opening remark. Pak Muhtar,
Well, thank you, Bu Judi.
please, Pak.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.
Very good morning to all. Food and culture are closely related words in daily life. Can you hear my voice, please?
Yes, Pak, we can hear your voice.
Okay, great. In relation of culture, food can be a noun, a verb, and also can be an adjective. As a noun, food is a symbol of wellness and well-being. As a verb, food is related to the culture in terms of obtain, interpret, understand, and use of them, of food and its information. And as an adjective, food represents the people taste. This all will affect the community preference of the eating behavior and food choice, and lead their nutrition and health status. Cultural evolution will begin when they have an interaction with the physical and social environment that make them to adjust and adapt with. Ladies and gentlemen, to inspire more interdisciplinary dialogue, Simerecfon organized this webinar on food and culture, presenting resource person who will enrich our understanding on food, its central roles in our lives, and ultimately its effect on our well-being, especially during the most challenging time of COVID-19 pandemic. This webinar is conducted in conjunction with the 10th anniversary of Simerecfon, themed Forging Initiative on Food and Nutrition Education amidst challenging situation. Celebrated throughout the year through various events such as competition, seminar, and workshops. This webinar is aimed at sharing experiences from Southeast Asia region and beyond on food and culture from the perspective of history and sociology and their influences in shaping today's modern diets, and providing a forum to form an interdisciplinary discussion on food and culture and their effect on health and nutrition. We extend our most gratefulness for the speaker, Mrs. Elise Mognard from Taylors University Malaysia, and Pak Rahman from Universitas Padjajaran, Indonesia. The moderator, Dr. Judhiastuty Februhartanty from Simerecfon. She is also our training manager for the support in this webinar. I warmly welcome to the registrant from 7 countries in Southeast Asia and beyond. I noticed there are Brunei Darussalam, India, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, and also Indonesia. And wish you a great learning experience in this webinar session. We hope that the information sharing you gain from this webinar will further be shared to your colleagues and students and encourage ideas for its application in your daily life or daily work. I thank the committee of this webinar for their hard work and the Ministry of Education and Culture, Government of Indonesia, for providing support for this webinar. Also to Nutrition Study Program, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, as this webinar is held within the course on Introduction to Nutritional Anthropology. I wish you all a very successful session. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yutun, Bu Yudi, thank you.
Thank you, Pak. That was a very insightful remarks. Indeed, we are celebrating our 10th anniversary of being Simeo Rekfon, but we have been as Simeo members since 1970s, ya, Pak Muhtar.
Yeah.
So this is really an opportunity, as Pak Muhtar has said, that we would like also to listen from other discipline on how much nutrition and health can actually work hand in hand. To work together in overcoming nutrition and health problem that we are currently have, especially in the region. Without further ado, I would like to first introduce our first speaker. I am honored to introduce all the speakers today. Before that, then maybe I would like also to read first the rules of the webinar. That at the end of the sessions, participants are expected to fill out the evaluation form as the proof of attendance. So you may not necessarily to fill in any attendance form, but we would like to request you to fill out the evaluation form. Certificates will be given to participants who completed the evaluation form, and the evaluation form link will be shared at the end of the session. The certificates will be available within 2 or 3 weeks after the webinar. For further information about this, please regularly visit Simeo Rekfon website and social media. And be sure to subscribe and like Simeo Rekfon YouTube channel and follow our other social media accounts. Next, I would like to... Next slide, please. Okay. For this one is for the Q&A later on. After the 2 speakers are finishing up with the presentation, we will be providing you with an intimate question and answer session. This is the link. We will provide the link, this link into the YouTube chat so that you can also fill in your questions. Please be brief and clear so that resource person can address your questions well. Next. Okay, now here comes the first speaker, Pak Fadli Rahman. He is a lecturer at Department of History and Philology, Padjajaran University. He is an Indonesian product with an international exposure and recognition, yeah, through the books that he has written, Ristafel and Jejak Rasa, For those Indonesian, I suggest you to Google the book that is written by Pak Fadli and enjoy the memory of how the colony, the Dutch colony, are influencing the way we are having our food and the way we are practicing our food practices right now. From those books, Pak Fadli was also receiving the nomination for one of the world's best book nominee for the culinary history category at the Gourmand World Cookbook Awards in Yantai, China. I think as Indonesian, I salute this achievement from Pak Fadli. So Pak Fadli, without further ado, I would like to share the mic to you to share this coming 30 minutes on the point of view from your part. Over to you, Pak Fadli.
Okay, Bu Judy, thank you. Please let me to present and upload my PPT.
Yes.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And it's really an honor for me to speak in this webinar, which coincides with the 10th anniversary of CMO RECFON, if I'm not wrong. And a happy anniversary for CMO RECFON. Okay, the webinar committee was asked me to present about the history of the Indonesian food culture. Hansly, and you need to know that the Indonesian food culture has long historical roots. So I think it's impossible to me for explaining detailedly about the long historical of Indonesian food culture from ancients to present. But I would be like to make connections between food culture with the nutritional issues that happens in the development of Indonesian food culture from the past to the contemporary era. Okay, if we talk about food culture in the anthropological fields, many assumes that food culture is related to how about the habits, the behaviorness, and the traditions of peoples in facing their food. And but if we try to comprehending about the elements that shape of food culture, foods is this shows about the interconnections between food with the many elements, history, geography, culinary etiquette, and ethnic diversity, and also recipes that preserve from generation to generations. And one of them is nutrition. In Indonesia, when we talk about food culture, we just talk about how to process and how to process to serve and to eat food. But the important element like nutrition is often upset to discuss. And if we look to the Indonesian food resources, we have very abundance of food resources from thousands sort of cereal, roots, tubers, and fish, and also hundreds of sort of fruits and vegetables and legumes, and also dozens of spices that use for the ingredients to make Indonesians foods. And if we look to the highlights, data, and facts of local food and the dietetic of Indonesians, source of carbohydrate, the staple food in Indonesia is mostly rice. And especially in Western Indonesia, Sumatra, Java, and Kalimantan, almost all staple food are rice. And the use of sweet potatoes and tubers tends not to be used as part of basic needs, interestingly, but rather as snack ingredients. And on the islands of Sulawesi, Bali, West Nusa Tenggara, and East Nusa Tenggara, the staple foods more varied, including rice, corn, banana, sweet potato, and sagu. And the East region, there the people, the food peoples, still species dominated by sagu, maize, and sweet potatoes. And the area facing the inter-island seas Indonesia, such as Sumatra, Sulawesi, Maluku, and Papua, face an abundant food resource. And in Kalimantan, as the largest island with tropical rainforest, the food potential relies on freshwater and freshwater fish from rivers and a variety of plants from its forest biodiversity. And next, in Java, as the most populated islands in Indonesia, there are three parts regions which has a different food culture in West, Center, and East. In hinterland region of West Java, there's a diversity of plants. If you're going to West Java, there the diversity of plants, and that prove that geographical conditions have formed a food culture of Sundanese, which is dominated by vegetables. And in the center of Java, there's so many sugar plantations that already existed since colonial era. And this shapes the food culture of inhabitants today, which is dominated by sweet taste. And if you're going to East Java, beef dominates the people's diets. And this because there are many cattle farms that have been developed extensively since the colonial period. And what is also the common of local food culture in several parts of Indonesia, such like Sumatra, Java, Bali, Kalimantan, and Sulawesi, is the use of coconut fruit as culinary ingredients. And the region that use the most spices is Sumatra, and followed by Java. Toward to eastern region, there are fewer kind of spices, and the culinary processing is simpler than in Sumatra and Java. I want to say that environmental condition is shape the trends of food culture of peoples. And about the richness of the Indonesian foods, some gastronom and also food scientists since colonial times until present has been inventories about the richness of Indonesian food. And the richness of and the diversity of Indonesian food culture are none other than the result of the wealth and diversity of its local food resources, and it cannot be separated from the supporting factors, including the natural environment and tradition which are inherited from the past. In the recent project of inventories is doing by Professor Mudyati Garjito from Universitas Gadjah Mada that she claimed collected 3,257 recipes from West to the East Indonesia. Is a very this is a big project of her. And if we look to the past, food culture of Indonesia is shaped from the ancient times and to present. I divided in 5 layers, five historical layers that begin from until 15th century, and the most decisive period is 16th century, which signs by the exchange of various food plants across continents, and early encounters with European influence. The scientific observation of food resources also start in this era, and this developed centuries by centuries, and in the 19th until mid 20th centuries, there was emerging of the introduction of new food crop cultivation system by Dutch colonial government, and also the emerging of the gastronomy culture, yeah, that exposed by the colonial gastronomy at that time, and also the emerging of the national research that developed by some scientists such like Van der Bert and Eijkman, and also founded the Institute for Food Fooding, or People's Food Institute. This is the first time about the concern of the food scientists, European food scientists, to observe about the richness of the Indonesian food resources, and this also and after in 20th century, the program of nutrition is developed under the Indonesian government, and this we can see how the development of Indonesian food culture is get the influence from the colonial period. And if we look to the ancient times, yeah, about the staple food, since prehistoric times, food in Indonesia has been formed based on its geographical characteristics. Yeah, in the East, tuber thrive as a type of food, and in the West, various types of cereal crops was flourished. And rice and fish were the types of food most consumed by the people of the archipelago in ancient times. If you look to the bas relief of Borobudur Temple in 19th century, this shows about how the Javanese ancestor was the rice farmer, yeah. And rice has been cultivated since around 5000 BC, and its origin are thought to be from its ancestor in West Africa, which spread to China and India and to Indonesia. During the 15th until 16th centuries, the exploration of spices, Indonesia as the spices islands at the time, has connecting archipelago society with other peoples from the overseas. This condition triggers the exchange of intercontinental food crops. In archipelago, emerge new food crops such as chili, corn, cassava, pineapple, papaya, cacao, tomatoes, carrots, potatoes, and vanilla, etc. It becomes part of Indonesian food culture today. What the most important period is the early observations to the rich potential of beneficial plants in Indonesia that use for food. This the figure of Rumpius, a botanist, a German botanist, with his work Ambonus herbal. He inventories approximately 1,200 plant species in Ambon, from tree species, shrubs, herbs to tuberous roots. And he explains, yeah, about where these plants could be found and cultivated, how they were cultivated, when they were harvested, and their use for food and medicines. One of the magnific plants he observes was sukun, or breadfruit. This is a prime medicinal fruit in the Asia-Pacific region at the time, and it's believed to be an alternative food that's easy to produce, cheap, and useful for the energy needs of the indigenous. And the Europeans call this breadfruit as a wonder food. Yeah. Not only attracts the scientists, the gastronom also so attract with the Indonesian food resources at the colonial time. And this science by the emerging of the gastronomy as a comprehensive science of food that emerged in France in the early 19th century. The gastronomy influence is entered Indonesia in the mid-19th century, and is marked by the development of Indonesian kitchen, or the forerunner of Indonesian food today. Yeah. these examples of the spirit of gastronomy in the colonial times in Indonesia. But behind the deliciousness of the Indonesian food since colonial times, there was the dietary problems and nutritional conditions of indigenous peoples. One of the most problem is beriberi, is a type of disease caused by nutritional problem that have occurred in Indonesia in the past. This disease, the symptom of this disease is the liver disorder and swelling of both legs. Both legs of the sufferer are sore and weak, making it difficult to walk. And Jacobus Bontius were the first doctor to investigate the beriberi in East India, now Indonesia. And the early scientific investigation of beriberi as the matter of diet and nutrition developed and continued by the Christian Eijkmans, a doctor who was invented a vaccine for beriberi. He was worked with the Vorderman and Gerrit Grains and concluded that cause of the beriberi is a lack of vitamin B1 or thiamine in food. Yeah, it turns out that the habits of eating white rice among indigenous people has not been realized for a long time as the main cause of beriberi. After being tested on chickens, it was discovered that house rice or brown rice also had the property of warding off beriberi rather than white rice that has been peeled from the skin. And after the invention of the nutritional research by the Eijkmans, the nutritional research developed year by year until the early of independence in 1945 until 1950. The condition at that time, Indonesia facing the instability of political and economic conditions, security issues, separation that at that time happens, the separatical movement in some areas, and this condition has impacted food crop failure, food scarcity, high price of foodstuff, malnutrition, and famines. You can see the from the bar chart in the front of you about the calorie intake in Java. Most of the populations consuming rice and very low to consume meat, fish, poultry, and vegetable. I think this the decisive period that shows about the high consumption of rice in Java at the time, and also in protein intake in Java during 1940 until 1950. This shows about the high consumption of rice, and the cause of the famines is in the early of the independence. Indonesia also facing the famine disasters, and it's caused by the crop failure, malnutrition, high rice price, and also unnatural conditions such like rebellion, refugees flows, and abandoned land, lack of rice. So, yes, with the conditions, the worst conditions of the malnutrition in the and famines in the early of independence, Sukarno tried to rebuild the conditions in the 1950s, and his speech in the Faculty of Agriculture in Bogor and mentioned about the people's foods or makanan rakyat as one of problem in Indonesia at that time. A newspaper and rumors often informing and questioning about high prices of rice, threat of hunger in everywhere. Many villagers eat banana ham, and there are malnutrition in many areas. And in a small village, someone has suicide because he couldn't give food for his wife and children. It's the description about the condition at that time. And this encouraged the government to launch a famous program called 4 Sehat 5 Sempurna or 5 Perfect. Yeah. And since 1950, the focus of government more emphasized to improve the productions, distribution, and quality of food for peoples. Institute of People's Foods under the leadership of famous nutritionist Dr. Puro Sudarmo launched a famous nutrition called 4 Sehat 5 Sempurna along with the publication of his book Dapur Indonesia Zaman Baru. You can see the poster of 4 Sehat 5 Sempurna, how Puro Sudarmo tried to encourage people to change their diets or their food habits from rice and try to diverse with the another staple foods such like cassava, tubers, sweet potato, sagu, and also other food stuff to improve the condition, to improve the nutrition quality of peoples. 1950s period is a time to disseminate education of nutrition for peoples. And during 1950s until the early of 1960s, there were several publications of books on nutrition knowledge to instill the understanding of peoples. This book, as you can see in your front, it distributes to schools and households in order to educate pupils and mothers on how to overcome some malnutrition that generally develop at the time, such like kwashiorkor, beriberi, iodine deficiency, lack of protein, and xerophthalmia. Yeah, the government also launched Revolusi Makanan Rakyat or People's Food Revolutions. In 1964, Department of Health published a book entitled Revolusi Makanan Rakyat. The Minister of Health, Major General M. Satrio, under the command of President Sukarno, aimed the publication of this book to give direction for peoples on how to diversify the daily diet. This book clearly stated about the problems that face Indonesia at the time include rapid population growth, people lack knowledge of nutrition, people to restrict their staple food on rice and low production of rice. And to improve the nutritional knowledge, government formed a board called Operation of Malnutrition Eradications. And in 1967, government also launched a cookbook and also a nutrition knowledge book, Mustika Rasa, Indonesian recipes from Sabang to Merauke. And this unusual cookbook, the taste of political interest was more prominent than the taste of gastronomic as stated in the foreword of this cookbook. Sukarno tried to, Sukarno aimed Mustika Rasa to cancel the problems of food security and sovereignty and public health that faced Indonesia during 1950 until 1967. This is the cover of the Mustika Rasa, an historical cookbook with the taste of political interest. Yes, besides the problem of staple food consumption, which are concentrated on rice and wheat flour, another problem is the development of instant food and fast food industry since 1970s, which is not in line with the low knowledge of nutrition among the Indonesian. If we compare with the condition in the early independence until 1990s and 2000s, Indonesians still high in consumptions of rice. And interestingly, beside rice, it's followed by wheat flour, whereas Indonesia never produced the wheat flour for themselves. Indonesians imported wheat flour from United States, and since 1990s until 2000s, the consumption of wheat flour is very high. And the conclusion is the world's, if you look to the historical facts, as I presented, the world of Indonesian culinary is not balanced with the nutritional quality of peoples. And the quality of public nutrition is also determined by people's low knowledge of nutrition. Famines and malnutrition in the early of Indonesian independence caused by the inability of government to manage national food system. And on the one hand, hiding cases of hunger and malnutrition is a form of political image of Indonesian government to cover up the failure in achieving food security and sovereignty. And on the other hand, government trying to improve the quality of public health through nutrition programs. Finally, the understanding the history of food and nutrition is needed to formulate and solve problems of food and nutrition in Indonesia today and future. I think this my presentations, the end of my presentation, Bu Judi.
Okay, thank you so much, Pak Fadli.
I stop share the screen.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I hope the internet connection is still okay in Bandung, ya, Pak Fadli, so that you can stay
Okay.
on until the end.
Yeah.
Okay, we are collecting questions. I think the committee, the host, has already posted the link for those who would like to ask questions. It's time for you to ask question to Pak Fadli while Pak Fadli is with us. Yeah, Pak Fadli, be ready. Thank you. Next, we would like to also introduce our second speaker. Again, we are honored to have Dr. Elise Mognard, a dear friend of RECFON. Yeah, we have been working together in a research, and this is only the time that we are having this collaboration in another form beyond research. So we are very thankful for Dr. Elise. We call her Elise. She is basically a product of France, Toulouse to be more specific, yeah. And then she is recently also joining in Taylors University in Malaysia. What is also interesting, her current research interest is on tourism promotion of food heritage together with environmental and societal drivers of food and eating habits. It is therefore in some of her slides, you will be also exposed to her experience or her past and current research in relevant to Asian Food Barometer. So without further ado, I would like to request Elise to take over the session. Please, Elise, time is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Judi. Thank you very much for this introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to this webinar. As mentioned, we have started a collaboration with CIMEO RECFON and Taylors University around the Asian Food Barometer, which is actually framed in broader activities of the LIA and the Chair of Food Studies, Food Cultures and Health. And it's really a pleasure to extend this collaboration to another form and to get to speak together today about the question of interdisciplinarity and how we try to build up from different perspectives. So here in our case, working on the Asian Food Barometer, building some from perspective both from nutrition and public health and sociology and anthropology. I'm very also grateful of the first speaker, Pak Fadli. There are many things that will connect. So I will try to make this link as I'm going through. Yeah, I think let's get started. Maybe just before getting started with the content of my presentation, I was just willing to say that I'm Taylors University and in the School of Food Studies and Gastronomy, where I'm leading the programs, postgraduate programs in food studies, so master and PhD. So if you are willing to understand more about food studies, which is also very much related to this question of interdisciplinarity, I think we can do it after, during the Q&A. It will be an honor. So today, I thought it would be great, and we spoke about it with UD, to address actually this question of, okay, how do we work from different disciplines on one same direction or one same here matter. And since actually we have here a common research experience in regards to the Asian Food Barometer, I thought it's great actually to go back to it. And as Pat Fadley was just introducing in his presentation, during actually this different this review of the different era of actually the relation of Malaysia in regards actually to food. When we reach actually the 1970s, we understand that there are actually some important transformation of the diet which are going on, partly related here to what we are used to call nutrition transition, after the word coined by Barry Popkin in 1993, followed then actually by works with Adam Drenowski and some further refinements. I won't go here into actually the detail of the different theories related to nutrition transition, but here we see that we have actually a first question to address together, and we see that history start actually to address it, which is actually really like going back to the transformation of our diet, and here, for example, the Indonesian diet. So nutrition transition, I'm quite sure that you are aware that it's actually describing this shift, especially in all low and middle income countries, this shift actually from cereals and fiber-based diets to diets which are actually getting richer when it comes to animal products, fat and sugar. We just spoke about it with Pat Fadley, so I won't actually go too much back to it. And when we go back actually to the this actually nutrition transition theory, what we can see is that in the further development, and especially starting with Adam Drenowski and Barry Popkin in 1997, we have actually this understanding that it's actually correlated to the economic status, and this actually basically like income available per capita. And in further development, we understand that it's not only related actually to the economic growth, but it's also related to other structural transformation of the society, such as urbanization, for example, but also the transformation of technology. And hence, actually, here, the development of this actually nutrition transition in regards to this actually structural transformation of the society. This is here, if I'm going a bit fast, but just actually to keep the essence for now, this is very much connected here to a process that we are calling modernization in sociology, where when we are speaking about modernization in sociology, basically here we are in this actually attempt to understand how societies are actually also transforming in regards actually to some processes and the combination of different processes, which are urbanization. You can see that here there is some kind of echo. It's also going back to the demographic transition, and sorry for the typo here, some changes in the structuration of the household. It's going back to some transformation in terms of social mobility, and especially the fact that people will actually have some kind of upward social mobility, where throughout their life, they will progress basically in regards actually to their position in the social stratification. We can also actually look at this social mobility in between generations. So meaning to say that at the same age, for example, the child will be actually in a higher position in the social stratification compared actually to the one of the parents. And finally, modernization will be also actually here going back actually to this combination of the transformation of the social stratification. So here, mainly for Asia, going back actually here to this, this emergence or increase, now we are no more in the emergence, the increase of this middle class, which is actually then going actually to produce actually some new changes here in the society. And basically, sociology will be interested not only in understanding, for example, social determinants. I'm quite sure that you are quite familiar with actually those terms. So, of course, we'll be interested into how actually some actually social determinants, for example, will then lead actually to some, for example, specific food and eating habits. But we are also very much interested into actually how does it actually transform basically the food and eating habits. So modernization is more actually made actually to encompass this idea of transformation of the society rather than actually determination is more a kind of static kind of perspective. So when it comes to modernization and modernization of food and eating habits, there are actually quite a number of work which have been done and which are actually very much actually related to the emergence of actually the specific discipline sociology of food at the end of the last century for the youngest of us here. So here, different actually studies have been demonstrating here the industrialization, or at least the commodification of the production, processing, and distribution of food. So here we can actually think about what was just mentioned by Fadli, but it's also actually touching to the question of eating out, which is actually very interesting actually locally here in the region, even though actually there is actually a more global trend on this matter of the increase of the eating out. Some other processes will be observed, such as, for example, the individualization, meaning to say that, for example, our intakes or what we will actually get to eat, or the fact that we are eating, for example, alone. So meaning to say that here we are going back actually to a situation that individuals will be actually more left actually on their own with this actually individualization. It could be also here related to some transformation, or, for example, simplification of the meal structure. So here, for example, if we are relating back to the Empat Sehat Lima Sempurna, it could be like a simplification of this structure. So meaning to say that there is no more Empat Sehat, there is only Tiga. And we can actually also observe that here, this actually meal structure could be also changed when it comes to meals which are actually called basically like synchronic. So here just mentioned about, but the meals which are actually organized with actually a kind of succession sequence of courses, we can see that sometimes there are actually some courses which are actually just actually removed from actually this meal structure. So meaning to say, for example, in the West, it could be like, okay, usually you have a starter and then the main course, and suddenly, or more or less suddenly, but throughout actually this process of modernization of food, we have actually the starter that will disappear from the structure of the meal. Some other transformation will be actually related to nutritionalization. By nutritionalization, we are referring here to the fact that basically the nutritional norms will get actually more and more important, and then actually leading to a situation where people are relating to their food mainly in regards actually to the implication in terms of health. That means that they will also think actually their food very much in regards actually to the potential consequences that actually this food or this diet could actually lead to in regards to their health. This last actually here main actually trend that I've been mentioning is the informalization of the food day. By informalization, that means that we are actually in a situation where the food day, which is the organization of the intakes throughout the day, will get actually destructured, meaning to say that maybe the main meal will be actually more less important when it comes actually to the fact that the population will kind of get actually this meal at certain, for example, point of time. I will go back to it with the findings later. And it could be also to associated actually to what we have been calling the grazing or the snacking sometimes. So meaning to say that we see that there is a kind of increase of intakes which are taken like in between. If I'm not mistaken, in Indonesia, we'll say cemilan, right? So here's just a little bit about the connections that we can build from a theoretical perspective between this theory of the nutrition transition and the way we will tackle it from the sociological perspective. I will now move to a more actually methodological standpoint to see, okay, then how actually does it concretize in the methods? So as you understood here, we have actually, we are looking at a specific experience we are showing with Simeo Rekfon, which is the Asian Food Barometer. The Asian Food Barometer has been here an initiative of the Chair of Food Studies, Food, Culture and Health. And here, this actually barometer is actually really like embedding this objective of interdisciplinary dialogue in its actually very methodological standpoint. That means that we are looking at ways we can work from these two perspectives, from the nutritional perspective and from the socio-anthropological perspective, to build up actually this interdisciplinary dialogue for the benefit, of public health. So if I'm taking here this actually here cartoon of the elephant, basically we try to avoid this situation where, for example, if the elephant is a diet, each of us is looking at this diet from actually his very specific standpoint. So we try actually to here build some tools to allow basically some actually kind of way to dialogue together around actually this question of the transformation of our diets in regards actually to social transformation here. So from a sociological standpoint, what we are interested in is to explore the implication of modernization in multicultural context on food habits. So here you see the connection with modernization. We are interested, and here we are actually starting to work in a cross-national comparison. So here for now, Malaysia and Indonesia. And overall, the aim is actually to challenge the convergence theories, which claims that basically anywhere in the world, when we are actually in middle class, we will actually get closer and closer. We will converge to actually a similar lifestyle. So what we are doing here is actually a work where we would like to see, okay, is it really happening? And if it's happening, at which level? And can't we here propose some kind of nuance to this actually convergence theory? And for the work we have been doing throughout actually the Asian Food Barometer on the question of protein transition more specifically, we definitely here observe some actually differences if we are just taking Indonesia and Malaysia in the way how diets are getting transformed in regards actually to this protein transition. So basically plant-based protein to animal-based protein or vice versa. If you're interested to know more about the methodology, I've put here two references that could be of your interest. And I just actually here carry on with actually some few more insights useful to understand then how actually we are working more specifically on this actually question of modernization. So modernization, as you understood, it's actually a question of transformation. So of course, when you speak about transformation, that means that we need actually to have here a way actually to measure the change. So we have different ways to do it. One way to do it is to go back to a series of repeated cross-sectional surveys where we have actually here different cross-sectional surveys with quite similar samples. When it comes actually to representativeness, you see that basically we are actually nearly in national representative samples. And basically the comparison of these different surveys throughout the time is enabling us then actually to understand the transformation of the patterns. Another way, here, just actually since I'm speaking about the technicality here, I was just willing actually to speak about the two data collections I will be speaking about. So I will be here referring to the data collections for Malaysia. So comparing actually the data collection from 2013 with the one of 2018. So what is called later, you will see a Malaysian Food Barometer 1 and Malaysian Food Barometer 2. When it comes to Malaysia, as you are aware, multicultural country, not to the same level than Indonesia. So here we have actually a survey which is then actually distributed through face-to-face interviews with 3 different languages to cope actually with the preferences of the respondents, so English, Malay, and Mandarin. We have also here the modernization score, which has been here proposed as a way actually to get actually into this understanding of the dynamic. So just actually for one specific data collection, so one cross-sectional survey, this modernization score is basically like an indicator of the dynamic within actually this given society. So this modernization is actually built based on different here indicators, which are urbanization, the number of children, so as a way to reflect the demographic transition, and finally the evolution of the income, so here as a way to reflect the upward social mobility. Finally, another with indications of change within one cross-sectional study or survey will be actually the discrepancies between norms and practices. So basically here we are making actually a difference between the practices, which is basically what we are doing. Sometimes we speak about behavior, and the social representations, and especially in this case, the social norms, which are actually basically what we think. So what we do is usually something which is very visible, observable directly. I don't need any specific tool to observe what you are doing, but sometimes I could need some specific tool, and you are a nutritionist, you know very well, to know, okay, what you have been actually doing and that you may actually miss to report. And social representation, we are interested here into really like what people think, and here we need actually some specific tools to access actually those representation, because of course in the head, I mean in the head, it's a very of course it's much beyond actually each individual. That's why actually we are speaking about social representation, but those actually social representations are actually not visible. It's actually something which is intangible. And we have here basically a questionnaire which is built around actually this willingness to understand about the discrepancies between norms and practices. And you can see that among actually the 7 parts of the questionnaire, we have actually food norms and food intakes of the last 24 hours. So here maybe it's useful to make this differentiation between dietary and social norms, because we are not speaking exactly about the same thing, even though they are connected. Dietary norm is most probably what you are very much actually aware of for those who have actually a nutritional or public health background, where they are going back to recommendations supported by scientific knowledge. They are disseminated by the medical community and representative of this medical community. And here, this recommendation will vary according to the discoveries of science. And I do believe that here it was a fantastic illustration by Pak Fadli just before about actually how this actually recommendation in Indonesia are actually evolving in between actually the period of the early independence up actually to nowadays. We could here look at it. You have also some work from Ave Levenstein, which are very much going back to this transformation of the dietary recommendations through time, which are demonstrating that basically, like at one point of time, Americans were discouraged to eat fibers, and now actually it's very much of the core of recommendation. So of course, here it's actually very much according to the discovery of science, and nutrition is still actually a quite new science, then actually leading to some discrepancies potentially in actually the recommendations. Now, the social norms are some aspects which are very much here related to what is actually collectively accepted in regards actually to what is appropriate to do, consider as appropriated to do. So, for example, in our case, it could be related to the food intake and the way the food intakes are organized throughout the day. It can be depending on actually the context of actually the different conception, and of course the content, the organization of each food intake will be also here very much here set by these actually collective expectations. Maybe if we search for synonyms here of social norms or indicators that we are touching on social norms, we can say that it's actually what is deemed correct, or sometimes we can say proper. So what is actually a proper meal, for example, is a very insightful expression first coined by Mary Douglas. So here to actually address this question of the social norms when it comes to meal. And here today I will be speaking about some norms related to the number of intake. So more specifically the meals, which have been asked by this question. Generally speaking, how many meals do you consume per day? So usually when we are going back here to general, usual, we are going back actually to some components which are very closely related to social norms. Practices, I won't go into detail here. We can speak about actually it later, but I do believe that you are quite familiar with 24-hour recall. We have actually some few different ways. I mean, it's not exactly the same way to go about the 24-hour recall, but maybe for now, I will pass on it, and we can speak about it during the Q&A if you're interested to know more about these actually differences. One of the main differences is that we won't ask specifically one specific intake. We'll go throughout the day, and every time there is something related to food, we'll stop and go through actually this reconstruction here. For now, let me here directly actually go through a few findings just to make it a bit more concrete maybe. So here, for example, going back to these discrepancies between norms and practices that I've just mentioned about. So this is just actually one of the findings which has been published into an article in Appetite, if you are interested to read more about it. And here you can see that we are basically comparing the norm in terms of number of meals per day and what people are actually doing. So there are some situations where there will be actually in a situation where norms and practices are consistent. So meaning to say that they will declare, for example, that what they deem as appropriate is actually to have 3 meals and that they're actually having these 3 meals. Or it can be 1-1 or 2-2. So basically, this is really like the middle part of the graph you can see here. And what is out of this actually middle part, which is represented with actually these blue color points, are actually some situation where we are actually in situation of discrepancies, or inconsistencies between norms and practices. So meaning to say that, for example, here we have actually some situation where we have, let me just take a pointer here. We have situation here where we have actually a norm of, for example, 2 meals, while the practice is actually a practice of 3 meals per day, which is associated actually to some actually situation of obesity here. So here we can see that there are actually some possible explanations that basically this actually way to organize the food day could have some implication also on the meal structure. And then actually, if you are having basically a norm reflecting actually 2 meals per day, the intake, the energy will be actually organized, structured throughout actually these 2 meals. But if you replicate actually this structure of the meal throughout actually 3 meals per day in the actual practice, that means that potentially you will get actually a higher energy intake, leading potentially in the long term to obesity. In the reverse, you can see that we have here the norm of 4 while actually having 3 meals, and it's actually associated to underweight. Finally, the situation where people are actually declaring a norm of 3 meals per day, but having actually 2, are actually associated to normal weight. But what is actually here maybe mainly of interest is actually the situation where the norm is 2 while the practice is 3, or the norm is 4 and the practice is 3. So here, why actually making this connection between norms and practices and these discrepancies with the process of change? It's basically going back to the fact that sometimes we change actually the way we do things because of the materiality of life. Let's say, for example, because of the way how actually work schedules are organized. Which is then actually leading to some transformation in practices, while what we are actually thinking about what is appropriate to do is still actually reflecting some actually, let's say, traditional patterns. So here, potentially leading actually to some actually discrepancies. So hence actually discrepancies reflecting a change. If I carry on, because I'm almost actually out of time. A few more insights here, going back to the informalization now of the food day structure. So here, food day structure, going back to this way the different food intakes are organized throughout the day. So in terms of formalization of these food intakes, and more formal is the food intake, more it will be associated to what we are calling a main meal, while some other intakes could be like kind of in between. And here, for example, we have actually some intakes which are taken, for example, around tea time, in the morning, in the afternoon. So here we are representing in this figure a comparison, and I'm sorry, it's a bit blur, a comparison between the barometer 1 and the barometer 2 for here, the specific case of Malaysia. And what you can see is that basically you will have the dotted line, which is representing the first barometer, and the plain one will be representing the second barometer. If we are looking now at the axis, so here the x-axis will actually represent the percentage of the population having this actually meal at this different time, which are actually in the y-axis. So what we can see is basically that we have actually for barometer 1, one peak for something which is called breakfast or associated to the breakfast, a second peak which is around lunch, then we continue for dinner and supper. In between, of course, we have here tea time and a second tea time in the afternoon. And what we can actually get to observe is that basically for the barometer 2, we will have actually a kind of decrease of the peak you can observe for lunch as well as for dinner, where the basically the time of the meal will get actually a little bit less actually kind of precise, if you want, for the overall population. So meaning to say that the pattern of the food day is getting actually desynchronized for lunch and for dinner. It's also observable here for this afternoon tea time. Here we are interested into these actually food day structures because it's going back to the assumption that the synchronization of the diets could actually be associated to the fact that we are actually basically regulating socially our intakes because of, for example, eating with people around us. This is something which is leading me now to the question of the individualization of the meal. So here you can see again a comparison between the first barometer and the second barometer. And what we can see is that for all these actually main meals, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we have actually a decrease of the meals which are actually taken in company. So here, not exactly the same proportion depending on the meal we are speaking about, but still actually an individualization. This individualization is actually contrary to what we could actually potentially hypothesize here. Is not actually linked to actually higher BMI. It's a reverse. You can see that individualization seems to be actually related here, linked to lower BMI. I'm representing here the means of the percentage of the socialization of meal. And you can see that basically we tend actually to have a relation which is actually reverse to the one we could actually first actually assume. I'm going a bit fast, just here to conclude on the question of eating out. Eating out as actually a way to reflect this actually industrialization of the processing and distribution of the food. So here again, a comparison between the two barometers. Mainly what we can observe is actually a quite stable actually percentage of individual, even though it's a slight increase of individual having at least one meal throughout the day out, while actually we have actually 34% of individuals having all their meals at home and prepared at home. Prepared at home only for 17%. You can see that here we have also 17% of the meal which are taken at home, but which are actually coming from outside, which is actually an increase compared to what we had in the first barometer. So meaning to say that we have a slight increase of the eating out and really like a quite notable increase of actually the meals which are actually taken, eaten at home, but prepared from outside. So basically takeaway or delivery. And it was before the COVID. So here we have actually potentially some quite interesting actually insights when it comes actually to then, for example, the control people could have on what is actually included, for example, in the preparations. Finally, here just to make a connection and to kind of close the loop, we can see that eating out will be associated with modernization. So higher the modernization is, higher we have actually the value of eating out, basically the percentage of intakes eaten out, except actually for here this last actually level, which is also the highest modernization level, where we could actually imagine that for really like the very most actually modernized part of Malaysia, we have actually a kind of return to eating at home, potentially facilitated by the presence of domestic helpers. I will stop here, and I would like to thank all the people involved in the Asian Food Barometer for the fruitful discussion, and it's always a pleasure to work with you all. Over to you, Julia. Sorry, I went a bit beyond time. Can you all hear me? Do you know if Dr. Yudi is having some connection issues, maybe?
Yeah, I think we do have a connection issue, so I will take it from here. So thank you, Dr. Alice, for your wonderful presentation. So yeah, we will next continue to the webinar for the Q&A session. So we have around 14 questions. So we will start for the first question. Please next. Yeah, so the first question will go to Mr. Fadli from Mr. Yasman from Indonesia. So he asked about, I'm wondering if you know the history why dessert in Bahasa Indonesia is called makanan pencuci mulut. So, well, literally in English, it will be the to clean or wash your mouth, something. So, yeah, that's the question, Mr. Fadli.
Yes, to Yasman, is a very funny question about why dessert is translated to pencuci mulut. Actually, I don't know also about why this translated to pencuci mulut, but I think this the unique pronounce of Indonesians to translate the desserts such like fruits, and also syrup or syrup, and also the ice cream, and this not a main course, and pencuci mulut is a kind of unique pronouncement of the bahasa Indonesia. I don't know exactly about why this called pencuci mulut. Perhaps we can deliver these questions to the linguist or ahli bahasa to explaining about this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fadli. So yeah, basically we will need to see it from the side of the language, side of a point of view, right, Mr. Fadli?
Yeah.
So I think Bu Judy is already back, so I will give the session back to Bu Judy. Please, Bu Judy.
Okay, thank you, Tahir. A good collaboration. So sorry, I was having a connection problem. And thank you for the committee. These are all questions that were selected from the participants. And now we have a question from FI Indonesia. The question are directly directed to Pak Fadli and also Elise. Related with the political issues on food and culture, in the current condition, could you please give your perspective about globalization era, which perhaps influence the political power and the point of food culture that is borderless within country, between countries. So I hope the question is clear. Globalization, borderless, and how does that affect food and culture within the country itself? Maybe if in short, that's the question from Effie. Pak Fadli or Alice would like to share your perspective.
Alice first, I think.
Okay, I can attempt a short answer to a very complex question. It'll be very insightful question, and at the same time quite complex because, of course, there are different levels of observation, and we can actually contrast what are the implications of globalization depending on if we are looking at, for example, if I'm just taking actually this very specific example of the protein transition I was referring to earlier. Basically, there is actually this global trend where we have actually here this shift from plant-based proteins to animal-based proteins, while there is also in the northern part of Europe, but also in actually very wealthy strata of the population of, for example, Malaysia. We have also a return to actually basically like plant-based protein. so decrease actually of animal-based proteins. So here, what we can observe is that this globalization trend is not actually happening in the same way everywhere. So meaning to say that the transformation here is very much actually related to then actually, for example, some food taboos when it comes to especially actually this question of proteins. It's very much connected to the meat, and meat are one of the most actually food concerned by actually taboos. So there are actually this aspect, and what we can see is that even within actually one specific society, the transformation doesn't happen in the same way, depending on how social and cultural position. So cultural, mainly going back to the question of food taboo. Social, here going back to these processes, for example, in terms of the dynamics of the income. And here we have actually really like some observation, which are actually to be contrasted within one country. So on top of actually some differences we can have between different countries, we have also some differences within one country. Then the question of the political power. So that one political power, definitely there are actually some here distribution of power which are very much related to transnational organizations, but also transnational food companies. And definitely there are here some influences, and some actually sociologists are looking very much, anthropologists also, are looking very much into this actually formation of actually political power beyond actually the national states, national boundaries. And from my end, what I feel like very interesting is to observe how definitely there are actually some influences which are actually beyond the borders, the national borders, potentially going back here to what we can call global, maybe communities, but they are also the subsistence when it comes to food and eating habits, more specifically, the subsistence of nationally framed determinants. Trying to make it short.
Yeah.
Pak Fadli, I don't know.
The whole semester, yeah, Pak Fadli?
Yeah. This question is remind me to the famous work of the sociological expert George Ritzer in his work, McDonaldizations. That's how the food company, like I should say I should say the name is McD, or and also other food global food companies had changed the trends of consumptions in every countries of peoples in every countries. If we compare with the past conditions, our ancestor is commonly to eat their traditional food. But today, with the globalization of the food companies from Western, and also it's followed and also followed by the Japanese, Korean food. Now the trends of the food consumption is now not traditional food again, but also global food trends, such like how we prefer to eat at French fries food, such like McD, KFC, and also Korean and Japanese food. This why countries such like Vietnam has been banned the global food companies such like McD to not exist in their country, because this globalization of food company probably to change the diet of the peoples in the country, such like Vietnam. We can see about the trends how the Indonesians now has swift the the habits to eat the traditional food to the fast food and also instant food, such like that.
Okay. Complex question require 1 semester of sharing probably and discussion, yeah, Alice and Pak Fadli. Thank you
Yeah.
for the question. I think to the best of the expertise of Alice and Pak Fadli, they have tried to capture or to address the point of concern that you raised. Another question maybe? Okay, we have from Indonesia again, Titur Priyo to Pak Fadli. Many taboos related to food in the past. There are many taboos related to food in the past. Do we still have those taboos now, Pak Fadli, according to your literature search or experience maybe when you're doing your research? You are still mute, Pak Fadli.
Yeah, there are so many taboos related to food, not only in the past but also at the present in the circle of the Indonesian food culture. For instance, how we have a taboo about rice. Indonesians often assumes that it can say we not yet eat if we not eat the rice. Kita belum bisa makan kalau belum makan nasi. Ini this phrase is very commonly practiced by many of Indonesians, that rice is a kind of main staple food that still practice in the daily diet. Yes.
Yeah. So you are saying that food taboos still exist, yeah, Pak Fadli?
Yeah.
In the other words, food taboo is not only exist in the past but also now. Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to this, Alice? Hang on. Okay, maybe. I don't know. This is also an interesting finding in our research, Alice. If you recall, rice eating. Yeah, rice eating. We are not considered to have a meal. Yeah, if we do not have rice in our plate. So I don't know. From the sociological point of view, do you have any further explanation about this?
On the question of rice, I mean, the way social anthropologists will address this question of food taboos are very much related to some symbolical aspects. And what we can observe is that most of the time, taboo are actually related to the fact that, for example, one food doesn't actually fit into actually the categories, the conceptual categories that we do have. But I'm not too sure how this could have some implication on, for example, rice. And maybe I'm not too sure that I will call it per se, I would say, a food taboo. But I understand that here we have a pattern, and we could actually observe the same in other latitudes, where if you don't have the staple, some people will consider that basically you haven't eaten, or you, or maybe like more than actually haven't eaten, they didn't have like a proper meal at least.
Yeah.
So that one is actually, so there is actually also like a very interesting actually aspect actually to understand about the transformation of the taboos. So here I was speaking about how actually it can be studied from a symbolical standpoint. But of course, as we are actually changing how we eat and the norms which are actually coming into place and so on, the taboos are also getting to transform throughout actually this process. Just to keep it short, to keep time for the rest of the question.
Okay, thank you, Alice. Okay, next question. Okay, it's a long one. Let me digest first. Perhaps the one in printed blue, yeah? the busier the people, sometimes they tend to eat more practical or comforting food in contrast to the knowledge that we have. What do you think about this? Maybe this one is addressed to Alice. Oh yeah, it is addressed to Alice. Practical and comforting
Well,
food among busy people.
It could be one of the implications, but I would say that it's not that simple. It's not that simple, and what we can observe is that, for example, this actually rise of middle class and of maybe like busier schedule will be also kind of accompanied by actually some temporality where people will maybe like use more like processed food like throughout the week maybe, or maybe they will go take away or eat out, but maybe during weekend actually they will actually learn how to cook. They will actually really like spend time to know about ingredients, to go for some kind of food tourism visits. So here it's connecting with the question also of food heritage that we were mentioning early on. So meaning to say that it doesn't come as a kind of monolithic kind of actually trend. There are actually, I would say, a trend and a kind of counter trend, which are actually coming together. And in this case, so this actually changes in the social stratification are not only echoed by actually more actually, for example, practical food or more eating out or more takeaway. They are also related actually to this interest into food culture, food heritage, into, for example, culinary knowledge and so on.
Okay, so again, there is no a magic one single response, yeah, to this complexity of well, this is part of the transition and the modernization at the same time. I'm turning off my camera. I'm so sorry. I just got the notification that my internet is unstable. Can we go to the next question? Okay, so from Kak G Indonesia to Pak Fadli. Okay, for the insightful presentation, we are appreciative to that. And she was actually addressing to the issues related to the natural disaster in which Indonesia is also prone to have some of those. So how does a natural or a disaster in general prone area influence the food culture, specifically in Indonesia? If you have some information about this, Pak Fadli.
Yes, I've been take a research about the observation of the natural disaster in Indonesia in the 19th century, and I think yes, we have in line in the
disaster area,
disaster area, cincin api, or the ring of fire, yeah. And you know what? Because we have in line in the ring of fire, the soil fertility is very good for agrarian sector. That's why many food plants such like rice and another beneficial plants growing very good in our soil, because this because the access of the volcanic disaster that influence the soil conditions in Indonesia. This also shapes the food culture in the some parts, many areas in Indonesia that are near with the volcanic regions.
Okay, thank you, Pak. So it is also influenced by the fertility, actually, yeah. With if you are talking about the area of ring of fire, it is the fertility that also influence the biodiversity probably of the food available in the area, ya Pak, ya.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. There are still questions, I believe. Let's move on to the next question from Effie again to Elise. Sometimes food claiming among similar region, among similar countries in the region also become an important issue due to the similarity of the foods that we have with the different names since the ancient periods. So what about the sociological or anthropological perspective about that, Elise?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Evie, for once again a very insightful question. I think very interested into actually the relation between food and power here. So definitely food claims for example, the fact that let's say one food or food way could be actually recognized by one institution or another as an heritage. I think we have some examples in the region. If we are thinking about just actually the recent actually recognition of occurs in Singapore as part of the UNESCO intangible cultural heritage, is very much related actually to some actually resources that could be economic resources, but also political resources, for example. So of course, people will fight to get actually this recognition. For UNESCO, for example, there is a provision to go for regional claims, and this has been, for example, happening, let's say, for example, for Mediterranean diet. So what we will do actually from a sociological or anthropological on that perspective is more like potentially also with a historical perspective, we will actually study how actually those practices are actually belonging to the people who are claiming it. What we could also potentially study are the variations of these actually kind of similar roots practices in then different, for example, different countries. If we are referring here to the region. So this could be, for example, the case of quite a lot of dishes which are actually claimed by different countries. But yeah, once again, it's quite interesting actually if we are looking at the knowledge point of view to look at how actually things are actually transforming, how practices are transforming, while actually being here evolving in different countries. And it's also very interesting to look at the process by which actually some actually society will organize themselves around actually, for example, this food claim to get actually this food claim recognized and legitimate.
Okay, thank you, Elise. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, Pak Fadli, interesting. How much is the influence of instant foods to Indonesian traditional food? From Manjilala.
Yeah, okay, Manjilala. I have answered a little bit in the previous previous questions about the influence of fast food and instant food to Indonesian traditional food. The expansions of the instant foods is very significant to change the diet and also the food patterns of Indonesians. And if we look to the decades since 1970s until today, the instant foods and also fast food industries has changed the taste of the Indonesians to their traditional foods. This treats to traditional foods actually, because many of people prefer to eat instant food rather to process their foods at their kitchens. And this trend is real, happens in the daily life. And yeah, if we don't try to preserve the Indonesian traditional foods, perhaps one day the next generation will be forget about the traditional foods, and they will be preferred to to choose instant foods and fast foods.
Okay, thank you, Pak. Yeah, like the worries now, tempe, the cost of soy is very high. Tempe is start missing in the market. So maybe who knows, in the future, our young generation doesn't know tempe anymore, yeah, Pak.
I want to give a more statement about tempe.
Okay, Pak.
This is very unique because in Indonesia, tempe is just a common food, but in abroad, such like in Japan and also in Europe and United States, tempe deemed as a superfood because in the nutritional research has proven that tempe is really good for the nutrition of peoples.
Yes, exactly. That's why nutritionists also recommended tempe actually in one of the component of healthier or healthier choice.
Yeah.
Thank you for assuring that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can we go next question? Okay, this is actually my question for Elise. Elise, so you were actually addressing the informalization of the food day, if you recall in one of your slides. Now, maybe audience would like also to see more how this, maybe what is the form of informalization of the food, and then how this is a potential maybe threat or benefits for affecting the nutritional status of the people.
All right, thank you for your question, Yudia. I don't have it with me right now, but the common assumption is that the informalization of food day. So here, going back to the fact that there is a destructuration of the food day. So, for example, less synchronization of the meals, while actually an increase of the in-between kind of intakes, sometimes called snacking, for example. So the general assumption here is that it could be actually related to some situation where people are developing actually some NCDs. I won't be able to back up here this. It's actually one very interesting question. I need to look into how data and how to look at it from in terms of analysis. I need to look into it, how we can make it happen, because it touched on basically sequential. It's a sequential series. So I need to look into it. But the general assumption is that basically, like the fact that people are less actually synchronized in regards actually to the food day. Will be also leading to less social regulation of the intake. So, for example, if I'm eating alone, maybe I will take more because there's nobody actually to look at me a bit weird because I've taken actually 2 portions instead of 1, maybe.
Yeah. So it's basically maybe this phenomena is making eating as more informal, so that it will also induce more frequency, probably. Yeah.
Possibly, not automatically.
Okay. So there is that potential relationship. Further research is necessary, and maybe different contexts will also provide different insights. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go next. Okay. From Dewi to Pak Fadli. Okay, I'm trying actually to grasp the essence here. Maybe based on any documents in the past, Pak Fadli, whether there has been a proof or evidence on how Indonesian in the past responses to the first introduction of the slogan 4 Sehat 5 Sempurna in the past. Maybe that's first, Pak. Whether there is negative response or how is it?
So yes, when the first time 4 Sehat 5 Sempurna launched by Puro Sudarmo with the nutrition institutions under his leadership, the the society at that time, some response positive, but for the other, they have a negative response. For instance, when people's encouraged to when the government encouraged when the nutritionists encourage people to eat meat, the society the assumptions of the society, eating meat is not good for their health, because in the in every meat is contained with cacing, or it will be how to say cacingan in English.
Worm infestation, but
yeah,
worm infestation.
Yeah, this develop in the circle of the society. They assumes that meat is not good for their health, and also consuming milk. People's deem that milk is not good for their body, because milk is same is like white blood. Yeah.
Okay.
White blood. That's why governments try to change milk from beef milk with the soy milk to change the perspective of the society. Soy milk is very popular at the 1950s, because many people don't want to drink milk from cow milk.
Okay. So thank you, Pak Faldi. So there has been response from the people back then, ya Pak ya, the pros and cons on this slogan, and then as you said, this is actually the attempt from the government to try to reorient the perspective of the people on certain foods so that it is seen as more healthier options, maybe more or less, ya Pak Fadli ya.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we still have time for Q&A? I'm asking to the host, but while you are will let me know, can we maybe move on to the next question? Do we still have question? Okay, this is a straightforward question from Ayunda, Elise. Is there any correlation between food frequency and food history in a country?
Maybe I will assume that food frequency is a meal frequency. I'm not too sure which one we are speaking about here. But if we are referring here to, for example, the number of meals that we may have throughout the day, there is definitely here a relation with history. For Malaysia, at least, most probably we were actually in a model where we were having 2 meals per day, which is actually currently shifting to 3 meals per day. And we can observe actually throughout history, there are actually very interesting works from a historian on actually the transformation of the number of meals, the name given to the meals, the time they will be taken throughout history. So yes, definitely it's actually very much connected. I'm not sure I addressed your question, Yunda. How so?
I think I got the same feeling also, the way you respond to the question, that this is more on the whether food frequency is reflective to the history, probably, yeah, of how foods or how meals are consumed in a specific context. So as you explained, they are pretty much linked on that. Okay, thank you. Do we still have time for question and answer? Maybe one more question. Do we still have one? Okay, this one. Yeah, let's go. We have a question from India, Bhagya Lakshmi. to Alice specifically, how food culture impacts our health. I think I would like also to ask Pa Fadli maybe to also respond to this question, yeah, as the final question.
Thank
Alice,
you.
maybe you would like to go first?
Yes, thank you, Bhagya. Bhagya Lakshmi, sorry. Well, it's here again, it's a quite huge question. So I'm thinking how to actually get started to address it. What we can observe is that there is definitely here some connections between what we are calling food cultures, their transformation, and their implication in terms of health. Because in food culture, we will have here some dimensions, which are actually going back, for example, to what we consider as edible or non-edible. For example, we were just, Pak Fadli was just referring to these actually representations in regards to meat or in regard to milk just before in Indonesia, that were then leading actually to some actually difficulties to look at actually those products as actually kind of edible products. Then actually potentially here having some implication in terms of nutritional status, for example, of the population. Further than this, there are actually some aspects which are very much going back to the consumption pattern, and I've tried actually to highlight actually few of these consumption patterns going back to the way we eat. Do we eat alone? Do we eat in company? When do we eat? Even potentially the utensil we are using could have some implication on our health. For example, there are actually some demonstrations that the fact of eating with chopsticks, with spoon, with hand, does have actually different implication on the spike of the glycemic index, for example. So there are actually here some very direct implication. So I can continue like this. We have actually different aspects here. And what is actually for us as actually sociologists, but also for Simeo Rekfan team as actually nutritionists, what is actually very interesting is that there are some interactions basically between food cultures and health. And it's really like exciting to go into this interaction to study, okay, how actually does, for example, the way to eat just alone or in company involve then actually some consequences for the physiology or for the biology. I will stop here for now, so Pak Fadli has time to address your question. Thank you.
Pak Fadli, do you have your point on this?
I think, yes, how food culture impacts of our health is very have relation between food and health, food consumption and health. Because if you eating well, it helps to reduce the risk of physical health problems, such like in the past there was a beriberi is also related with the food consumptions, and in today there is a heart disease, and also diabetes is also related with the trends of the food consumptions. And it also helps food is eating how we consumptions of food with the eating well. It also helps us with energy levels and our general health. Perhaps you may have noticed that our mood often affects the types of food we choose, as well as how much you eat.
Yes. Okay. So the whole components of food is affecting health, yeah, Pak Fadli. You are saying that the psychological, the emotional is also part of the point where food culture would also give impact on our health. If I would like to summarize what your point is.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much again. Please go with all of us in Zoom room to congratulate both speaker. Thank you so much. And I will not be able to summarize or make a conclusion out of these talks, but let me assure you that it this the discussion today underlined the point where nutrition and health needs this interdiscipline discussion. So again, reiterating what was actually addressed by our director, Pak Muhtar, we would like to invite participants out there to follow social media of Simeo Rekfon and drop a comment if you think you will have proposed collaboration in the future, so that we can actually make this nutrition and health problem to be eradicated through interdiscipline approach. I think with that, I would like to end the session. Thank you so much for your contribution and discussion. See you again in the next webinar from Simeo Rekfon. Thank you so much.